How's it going, folks? Welcome to Algebra 2. This is Mr. Labasse. Today we're going to be looking at factoring using the Xbox. Let's go ahead and get started. So when we factor using the Xbox, the first thing we're going to want to do is set up our X. When we set up our X, we're going to have our values A times C on top and our value of B on bottom. Just a reminder, standard form of a quadratic is AX squared plus BX plus C. So in this case, our X will be set up where it's going to be A times C, so 3 times 7, that'll be 21, and our B value will be 10. Essentially, we are looking for two numbers that multiply to be up to 21 and add to be 10. Okay, we should be able to tell that that's going to be 3 and 7. Once we have these two values, we're going to set up our box. Our box is going to include AX squared, it'll have C, and then let's call these two pieces D and E. It'll have DX and EX. And essentially, we're just going to find the greatest common factors. So given our situation here, our AX squared is 3x squared, our C is 7, and we're going to plug in DX, so it'll have 3x and EX, which will be 7x. Again, we're going to go ahead and factor our greatest common factors of our columns and our rows. So from this row, we can see that 3x is the greatest common factor of both of these. And from here, it's just a multiplication problem. 3x times x gives me 3x squared. X times 7 gives me 7x. 3x times 1 gives me 3x. And to check my work, 1 times 7 is 7. So the factored form of this function here will be x plus 1, which is this piece right here, multiplied by 3x plus 7. And that is our solution there. That's our factored form. We've got two more examples we're going to run through. So for this one, we have the function f of x is equal to 4x cubed plus 4x squared minus 3x. Now, right off the bat, you should notice that there is an x on all of these pieces. So the first thing we're going to do is factor out an x. We're going to have x times 4x squared plus 4x minus 3. Now we can set up our box again. So our A times C value will be negative 12. Our B value is 4. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to be negative 12 and add to be 4. What are those two numbers going to be? We should be able to see that it's going to be 6 and negative 2. So now setting up our box, we're going to have 4x squared. We're going to have negative 3 as our C value. We're going to have negative 2x and 6x. So again, we're going to go ahead and find the greatest common factors. 4x squared and 6x have a common x. They also are a 2 in common. So we have 2x there. 2x times 2x gives me 4x squared. 2x times negative 1 gives me negative 2x. 2x times positive 3 gives me 6x. And I can see that 3 times negative 1 gives me negative 3. That checks out. So our factored form, you cannot forget this x. Do not forget it. It is super important. It still exists there. Okay, so please do not forget that. We're just going to bring it right down. So we're going to have x multiplied by 2x minus 1 multiplied by 2x plus 3. And that right there is our factored form of this function. Now the Xbox doesn't just apply to things set in standard form for a quadratic. We can also use it when we have something that looks like this, where x to the 4th minus 2x squared minus 8. So essentially we're going to do the same thing. We're going to set up our x. So our top, a times c, will be negative 8. Our a value in this case is just 1. Our b value is negative 2. What two values multiply to be negative 8 and add to be negative 2? we should be able to see that's going to be -4 and +2. So setting up our box, we're going to have that whole first term. So instead of x squared, we're going to have 1x to the 4th, and our c value is still -8. Now, the only difference here when we're setting up our box is we look at this middle variable, okay? So it's x squared, so we also need to have x squared in both of these, and we're going to fill in the other two numbers appropriately. So we have -4, and we have 2. So our box now has x squared, or I'm sorry, x to the 4th, 2x squared, -4x squared, and -8. So let's find some greatest common factors. X to the 4th and 2x squared have a common x squared. X squared times x squared gives me x to the 4th. X squared times +2 gives me 2x squared, and x squared times -4 gives me -4x squared. Checking my work. -4 times 2 gives me -8. So my factored form here will be x squared plus 2 multiplied by x squared minus 4. Now I would say that I'm done, except for I am not. Which of these two factors is still factorable? We should be able to see that this one right here is known as a difference of squares. Okay, anytime that we get a function where it's x squared minus 4 or x squared minus a perfect square, we're going to have a difference of squares. We're going to have x squared minus some number, let's call it a. This will always factor to be x plus a multiplied by x minus a. Okay, when we distribute this, we'll be able to see that this is x squared minus xa plus xa minus a squared. Those factor out. So we're always going to be able to do this. In this case, we still have x squared plus 2, but our second piece will factor to be x plus 2 multiplied by x minus 2. And that is a factored form of our original function. Thank you very much, folks. That's all I have.